Spoon for me, so you gotta be that good.
No, it's nice because like today I was like got like such from today and I was like oh, I'm gonna try. Yeah, it's very convenient. Other than it gets stuck like it doesn't go straight. That's how this one goes too. It's like I don't know how you understand what you did, but it just goes around and when it gets more evaporated, it just goes off and says it's kind of how that is. That's what I always get told. Ellen, I'd say. Lamora. Ellen. Lamora. That's what I would say.
And they were just told that. That's awesome.
Yeah, getting the money.
But
Yeah.
You ready?
yep.
Yeah. No.
You guys ready?
Amen. Yeah.
All right, I'd like to welcome everybody out to our city council meeting for Wednesday, May 8th, 2019. We will start with a pledge of allegiance that will be offered to us by Ellen Lamora. If you please come up.
Can everybody please rise? I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your participation in our meeting. Any comments or recognitions by the council today?
None for me today, thank you.
Okay. We will move on to the public comment section of our meeting. Audience members may bring any item to the city council's attention. Comments will be limited to 2 minutes, and state law does prohibit the council from acting on items that do not appear on our agenda. So if you'd like to speak to the council at this time, please come to the podium and state your name at this time. Thank you. Seeing none, we will close the public comment portion of our meeting. All right, we will move on to our City Council Board and Committee reports. Any reports for this week?
I do. One of the boards I sit on is Wasatch Front Waste and Recycling, and so AKA your garbage. I guess just kind of report, we've been trying to work down through a budget process to where we're trying to reduce the tipping fees. So tipping fees are what you pay per tonnage as you take it to a landfill. And we've, through some different contract negotiations and stuff, we've locked into a better rate with the Salt Lake County landfill to where our tipping fees are down to $28.50, down from, I want to say they were about $32 to $35 a ton. So it's creating some good savings on that. And basically what it means to a resident is it enables us to keep your prices where they're at a little longer rather than having price increases. And then at the first of the year, we had, there's been a huge change in recycling. There's just with the China issue, they won't accept a lot of our recycling products. And so the recycling market has really been struggling. And so the cost to take recyclables to the processors has gone up, and we had decided at the first of the year to lock into a rate of $47 a ton. So you'll see that your garbage costs $28.50, but your recycling costs $47 a ton, and that seems weird because it's like, well, we should be less because they should be making money on it, but it's because the change in the market, it's really driven those costs up. But according to the surveys that we've done in our area, our residents want to continue to recycle because they feel like the benefit of recycling is there. But we were struggling a little bit at locking in at $47 a ton because it seemed so high, but we decided to lock in at that rate and with Rocky Mountain Recycling. And we had split some of the tonnage with another one, which is Waste Management, does some recycling. But those fees have now gone up to $75 a ton. So it was a good move, I guess is my point, that we're just grateful that we locked in at $47 a ton, even though at the time it seemed like it was going to be a little bit high. It was a good move financially for us to lock in at those rates. So just so you know that that's how garbage works. It seems like recycling should be less, but recycling costs a little bit more, but it definitely has a benefit to we don't fill up our landfills quite as fast and things like that. So as far as preservation of our environment, it's definitely beneficial. And then,
Sherry, can I ask a quick question on the recycling? Have you gotten any reports as far as of the recycling collected, how much is actually being recycled? Because I know there's been a lot of reports out there lately that have actually dealt with that there's a good majority of that because it's contaminated, that's still actually ending up in the landfill. So obviously, we're paying $47 a ton for the recycling, even though some of it's still going to the landfill where the tipping fees are much less there. Have they been able to quantify or give you a report recently on what's being collected and what's actually being recycled of that's being collected?
yeah, they have, and I apologize. I don't know, I don't remember exactly the numbers, but that might be a great thing. I'll pass that along to
be great.
our communications team and to see if maybe they can post that out there so people understand, again, the real importance of making sure what actually goes in your recycling can be recycled. Because it's changed a bunch from what most of us think can be recycled. So maybe we need to recycle through that, through our communications team, so they understand that, because a huge chunk of this is ultimately ending up in the landfill, and we're paying $47 a ton for it, and we could be only at $28.50 if it can't be recycled.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And then one other opportunity you had a week and a half ago or so was to go to, maybe 2 weeks ago, was to go to the Utah League of Cities and Town. Herriman participates in the league, and the league is kind of advocates for cities. They lobby and help with different legislative things. We were able to attend their conference in St. George. Really had some great learning out of that. Brock Long he used to be the FEMA director for the United States. He was there. He presented to us just a ton of different emergency response things, different things that we should do in our communities and in our neighborhoods to prepare for emergencies. That will be something we'll be going through through City Council, through our work meetings and stuff, to really bring ourselves up to date and bring all of the community up to date on different things that you can do, even as much as getting your yards and your neighborhoods in compliance with wildfires and things like that. So it was a great opportunity to really learn a lot more about that and to prepare our community for emergencies.
Got a quick one. It's been in the news a lot lately, but just in case you've missed it, I'm a representative on the Southwest Mayors Coalition. That's South Jordan, West Jordan, Riverton, Herriman, Bluffdale, and Copperton. Mayors are getting together, really have been under the leadership of Mayor Staggs from Riverton, following the Olympia Hills debacle last year, my words. That the city's really solid. We needed to work together towards growth. It used to be that we were on kind of these isolated areas where South Jordan could just plan for themselves, and it didn't really affect their neighboring cities. We're at a point now where not only do our borders right up, we're building right up on our borders next to each other, but what we're doing in each city is crossing over and affecting each other. What, say, South Jordan's building across the street from the high school empties out onto our roads, et cetera. So we've really just kind of gotten together to work towards future planning. It was announced, I want to say 3 weeks ago, that we secured the funding to do a comprehensive study for the area. So that study is going to look at our existing plans, gather the plans from all of the cities, what have all the cities planned for their existing infrastructure and residential, commercial growth, et cetera, and how does the infrastructure compare with what's already been built? We obviously have some problems along with that, and we think we know where some of those pinch points are, but it's going to study that and what changes need to be made to the infrastructure just to come up to where we need to be with our current planning. And then it will also look at if we continue to, I guess, build those plans out as they stand, what does that infrastructure need to look like, let alone what it needs to look like if we go beyond our boundaries, including Olympia Hills, the whole swath of land on the west side of the valley. So it'll kind of go in stages. We got the total study is going to be about $250,000, $250,000. It will take probably 12 to 18 months to complete. It's out to bid right now to see what consultants will come in. The funding came $125,000 from Wasatch Front Regional Council, which is kind of I'm still trying to fully understand how that works, but they're kind of a quasi-governmental agency that divvies out federal road monies according to certain criteria, et cetera. So they granted the effort $125,000, and Salt Lake County granted us $100,000 towards this study. So we're hoping definitely, and we've sent a letter stating such to the county council, that they will at least wait to approve or consider something like Olympia Hills or anything else until this comprehensive study is done and we catch up on infrastructure. So I would just encourage all of our residents to reach out to the county council members and ask them to do the same thing. We, in the Southwest Mayors Group, have reached out to several of the county council members and are meeting with them on a regular basis. Just talk about these concerns. Those initial conversations have gone quite well and are very receptive to a lot of this. So we just need some public support as well as we continue down this road.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to item 8.1, presentation of the 2019 Outstanding Facility Award. Looks like this is going to be done by Leanne Powell from the URPA. I knew you were in here somewhere.
Just hiding in the back. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for giving us a couple of moments to recognize you guys and the great work that you're doing. As you mentioned, my name is Leanne Powell. I'm the Executive Director of the Utah Recreation and Parks Association. And this is John Bradley. He is our President-elect of that same association. We represent about 1,400 parks and recreation special events professionals around the state of Utah. And as part of our conference each year, we take nominations for a number of different awards that we then initially present at our conference. And what we do is we take those nominations, and then we get all of our past presidents together, and they select the awards. So this is one of the favorite things we do, is to get to come into the communities and thank you. It gives us an opportunity to thank the mayors and councils for the great work you're doing in advocating and supporting parks, recreation, special events, and also to recognize the outstanding leaders. And as you well know, Wendy Thomas is one of those outstanding leaders. She's kind of my go-to person on when we start talking about what kind of trainings and things we need to be offering in the state. She's the one that will always give me the honest opinion on, these are the things we need to make these things happen, and just a great leader. And we gave out a scholarship to Kevin Schmidt with special events. He's doing great things for your community as well as our association. So we just appreciate the leadership and the great work that's happening. And I'm going to turn the time over to John, and he's going to give out this particular award.
Well, first we want to just say that we give, in the whole state, only a couple facility awards, and they range from actual buildings to parks. And the type of competition that Herriman was up against was facilities such as the Springville Aquatic Center that's brand new, to name one, and many other fantastic facilities. And so the competition was steep, but I think the vision was evident of the council and mayor and staff in putting a beautiful park here in the center of your area next to your city facility, where you could truly use that as a community gathering space, a place to really create community and bring people together. And so the award that was actually given to Herriman City is for the J. Lynn Crane Park. Let's give a round of applause to Wendy and Herriman City. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
We appreciate it.
Thanks. We really appreciate the strong advocacy and support that you guys give your staff.
And if you wouldn't mind, we would love to take a picture with you guys real quick.
We love pictures too. Pictures are good.
Wendy, you tried to get out of that one.
He knows better.
Spend a lot of time working on our outdoor spaces, and it's appreciated to be recognized, and we appreciate all of the efforts of our staff, as they're the ones that make all of this happen. Right,
Thank you very much.
Okay, we will move on to item 8.2, approval of a resolution appointing members to the Planning Commission. Michael?
Thank you. As the council knows, we recently had to cancel a planning commission meeting because we had a surprising number of absences from our commission, which caught us all off guard. And that doesn't happen very often. But part of that was because we unfortunately lost a couple of commission members. And we've been working together on reappointing or appointing some new members to our commission, and that's what we're here to do tonight for the council's consideration. One of the appointments that is before you tonight is Lauren Palmer, who has been serving our commission as an alternate member for not quite a year yet. And he lives in Council District 1, and the Planning Department has proposed that he be made a regular member of the Planning Commission, so that he would move from an alternate member to a full-time commissioner or a regular commissioner. Our regular Planning Commission members serve for a period of 3 years at the pleasure of the appointment of the City Council, and alternate members serve for 1 year. So in addition to that proposed appointment, we have also proposed 3 new alternate members in the city. And in considering these appointments or these proposals, we really looked for diversity and also looking at the geography of our city. And in submitting the appointments to you, if you were to accept them, we would have essentially, combining both the regular and the alternate members, we'd have 2 commissioners in District 1, 3 commissioners in District 2, 3 in District 3, 2 in District 4. And so that would be a full commission, 7 members and 3 alternates. Because we added this to our agenda kind of at the last minute, Lauren Palmer asked to be excused. He was not able to have this in his agenda. Another alternate member is not here tonight, and that is Colby Oliverson, who works for the Governor's Office of Budget. 2 of the appointments, though, are here tonight, and if I could have them come forward. Joy Kasiki is here. She is a recent BYU graduate, is a GIS analyst with the Division of Natural Resources here in the state. And then Heather Garcia is a manager with St. Mark's Hospital. And these 2 individuals we interviewed, and my staff is very excited to be working with them and the other proposed appointees for your consideration tonight.
Well, obviously, congratulations, one. The Planning Commission is something that is near and dear to my heart because I served 7.5 years on the Planning Commission prior to deciding, having a momentary lapse in judgment and running for council. But it is a very, very essential task and function of every community, and it's a challenging one. So I hope you're up for the challenge, but I hope you're excited to be part of having a say in how our community develops out. So congratulations on your selection.
I don't know about congratulations. I'll just say thank you, because I mean, as much as we say this is a thankless task, Planning Commission, I think is even, I say this all the time, I think is even tougher, because you're the ones who have to deal with the people that get the letters in the mail that says this is being proposed. Like you're our first line of defense, I guess, that way. And I feel over the last few years, we've developed a really good core group of people, and these additions, you guys are going to be fantastic additions to that. If I could just talk a little bit about the difference between the full member and the alternates, the fact that we have the alternates, I think what we've talked about before is that's almost kind of the training ground. As an alternate, they come to the meetings. They might not be sitting up here making decisions in those meetings, but they're at those meetings. They're at the trainings, the staff meetings, etc. And it's like drinking from the fire hose to figure out the process of how this works, even if you have experience in the field. So I'm just grateful that we have good, knowledgeable, experienced people willing to come do it. It truly is volunteering and takes up a lot of time. So thank you.
And I think, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but those that actually stepped forward and applied for the positions that were open this time, we had a tremendous amount of response on that, which I think speaks volumes to not only the individuals that were selected, but those that were not, that said, I'm willing to be engaged, I'm willing to be involved in what is sometimes a very thankless job, but I care about my community to do that. So I think that really needs to be called out for all of those that applied.
Yes, and we're retaining those applications. We're considering there's some other opportunities to serve in the city, and as well as you saw earlier tonight, the community engagement process with the general plan. And I'm hoping that we can reach out to those individuals because they already have expressed interest in planning and growing and managing the city. So they may be good candidates to help us out with our general plan project as well.
I can't help myself. I just have to dovetail on what Councilman Smith said about really our community is unique. I don't know if people really understand it, that the level of involvement that our citizens have is off the charts compared to most other cities. As we go to all these different boards, as I've mentioned, meeting with county council, et cetera, they were blown away at the involvement of people just with the recent round of, the Olympia Hills open houses, whatever, not just the people that showed up, but the people who contacted them with constructive comments, knew what was going on, they knew the details, they asked the right questions. Like the level of involvement we have from people is just amazing.
Again, thank you. I'm not sure you'll be wanting that thanks a year from now, but, thank you for your time and effort. And with that, I will accept a motion from the council.
I would love to make a motion to approve resolution number R19-2019, appointing members and alternate members to the Planning Commission.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Jared?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. That motion passes. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, we will move on to item 8.3, Unified Fire Authority Quarterly Report. Chief Pilgrim.
All right, Mayor and Council, I'm excited to be here tonight to present our first quarter report, so January to March, on just some of the business conducted by the Unified Fire Authority. So let me just pull it up real quick and good to go. All right, so just some basic statistics kind of showing department-wide where we're at. So in the last 3 months, so again, January to March within Herriman, Station 103 had about 184 calls, which again, about average. You'll see on the next slide where we're seeing a slight increase in their call volume. 103 seems to be getting a little more busy. So they had 53 fire calls and 131 medical calls over that time frame. Station 123, they had 140 calls during that first quarter, with 43 being fire and 97 being medical. And for those watching or listening, you'll see as we go through, fire calls don't necessarily mean houses on fire. It's alarms and different things that we respond to, service calls, things that aren't necessarily a medical related call. We just classify those as fire service. I left these slides in there. I found this one interesting. If you kind of look at this is Station 103 over their 12-month average. They are slowly becoming busier. Again, there's not really any kind of like sign or trend that we see, time of year or anything like that. Typically our summer months tend to be a little bit busier in some places. Other places it picks up in the wintertime. So it really depends on recreational activities, the types of business and homes and what's going on, the age of the community. And so a lot of the stuff you see is pretty typical. The top line there is our total calls for that time frame. Medical is the middle, the black line, and then orange is the fire calls. So fire is staying pretty steady, not a lot of increase or decrease there. Medical calls are increasing, which is to be expected with more population and people coming in. So Station 123, on the other hand, has stayed relatively steady. A few slight increases, nothing that's too alarming or makes us too concerned. You'll see there they're pretty average for their 12-month call volume. This kind of breaks down again statistically the specific types of calls that were going on. Again, falls are pretty common. We see this a lot in a lot of our different areas, but very, very common type of call, especially as population gets older or have more elderly moving in. Those are kind of calls we expect to see in some instances. And a lot of those falls are just even calls for help. We go help people up. If they're having a problem, we'll assist them in getting something accomplished at their home, getting them back into bed or whatever it needs to be. And then we'll move on from there. Traffic accidents, again, we've seen that increasing on each one of these quarterly reports. Seems like there's still, definitely not a decline in that area, but something that we're not totally abnormal, but this hasn't really dropped off either. So, okay, fire calls, again, very, very typical to have a lot of alarm notifiers where we're going to go to somebody's house. We've been notified by an alarm company or whichever, and we're going to just go make sure everything is okay. Pretty common there. Other than that, 8 fires as far as house fires go. Nothing significant really occurred in Herriman over the last few months. A lot of those might just be small, small food on the stove kind of fire, microwave fire. One thing that's pretty common that people don't know is we get a lot of calls when people's ovens start on fire. They're either cleaning the oven or they have something cooking in there. It starts on fire in the oven, which the oven's for the most part made to handle. But a lot of times when we get those calls, we're going to respond. We're going to make sure it's not a legitimate problem. Most of the time the homeowner can take care of that before we get there. But those are probably one of the most common house fire calls that we go on is cooking. Cooking is very common, so. Then you'll notice too, we include like our gas leaks in there, lockouts, smoke investigations. The bomb threat, we had one of those at the Providence Elementary School, beginning of the year. Turned out to be nothing, just one of those, if you remember back from your junior high days, the 5-pound flour sack turned into a baby. One of those left probably for a few months, so they probably failed that class because their baby was on the sidewalk for a while. But found that, and then coincidentally, we had 2 other calls that afternoon for explosive devices over where they're doing some blasting in some new subdivisions. So nothing too alarming there. We look at those things, we take them pretty serious, make sure there's nothing nefarious going on there, and that one was deemed to be not too bad, so. Station activities. So the wintertime, we tend to be a little bit busier with station tours. Things slow down as far as, obviously the outside events and then community stuff. Obviously, we're ramping up for that now. We've been providing a lot of assistance to and support with the RSL facility. We're staffing those games. We've had a lot of luck there as far as making sure we have everything that they need, and they've been a great partner. It's awesome to be able to represent Herriman out there too and have the fire department there, which is great. Station tours, we've seen already an increase in those just over this month alone. April and May, I've been watching that. But we got, several, almost 300 people through station tours. I'm actually just over 300 people. So pretty awesome. We love people coming to our stations. We want them to feel welcome there. So these are something that we highly encourage, and we want people to come do that stuff. It's awesome to showcase what we have here in Herriman. Again, our prevention division is very busy with a lot of the new construction going on and upkeep of the current stuff that we have here in Herriman. A lot of plan reviews. I'm talking to Captain DeVogue on a fairly regular basis. He's doing well, by the way. Staying busy, making sure this stuff is getting taken care of, even while he's working through some of the stuff. If a lot of people don't know, he was actually diagnosed with cancer a few months ago, and he's been staying on the job and sticking to this stuff, which is pretty impressive because I don't think I would. So it's pretty awesome just to see his dedication and diligence, and that he's really committed to making sure this stuff is getting taken care of. And when he's not there, he has staff that's lending him assistance. So, but a lot of things are happening. We're staying on top of the inspections. So that's been awesome to see that continue. Make sure we're not getting behind on anything there. One thing I want to do tonight, we did in the last crew spotlight, is I just kind of want to showcase one of our local crews here in Herriman. So tonight we have with us Station 123, so they're just off of Patriot Ridge Drive. So again, for those listening, the larger fire facility that's up there also has a training room. We're hosting a lot of community events, a lot of educational stuff. We actually have a nationwide NFPA class there this week where they're teaching a class on home ignition zones and wildland-urban interface. So we're doing 2 sessions of a 2-day class. We got people from fire departments, and a lot of it's actually arborists and other people who deal with actual fuel mitigation are attending this class. Instructors are from Boise Fire Department and Austin Fire Department down in Texas. So it's pretty awesome to draw those kind of people just because of our facilities and kind of the unique environment we have out here. So I know it was mentioned earlier in the work session, we're doing a lot of stuff year-round to make sure that we're addressing the different types of needs and concerns that we have here, especially in the southwest corner of Salt Lake County and within Herriman itself. So tonight we have with us Station 123. They're in the back, so they can have a quick escape if they get a call. But I'd kind of like to just recognize these individuals real quick. Excellent individuals. These are definitely people that if I have an emergency at my house, I want them showing up. Captain Joe Wilkin, he's been on the job for quite some time, right? So 95, so he comes with a lot of experience, a lot of background. He was one of our paramedic instructors for a long time.
I'm gonna make you stand up if you don't do it on your own.
Does a great job.
He is. Stand up.
That is true, he was standing, so he's on the chair now.
Ryan, ask him to stand up.
Oh, yeah, he is. Again, we reminded him to get on the chair, maybe. Yeah. So, no, great captain. I love having him in my battalion. I think I kind of won with that one. He's actually been here for just over 10 years. So, great wealth of knowledge. His father was an engineer, just retired previous to this year starting, and so he was here with Joe at 123, which is pretty awesome and unique. So.
Can you ask him how many years he's worked in Herriman?
Yeah, so Yeah.
For a while. Been pretty dedicated to Herriman.
Awesome having him here. So I appreciate his knowledge and experience. Yeah. And he came from one of our busier areas too to here, so he comes with just a ton of experience with a lot of different stuff that he's dealt with. We have engineer Jason Bozen, who's actually one of our master engineers. He's a pretty awesome driver, so can pump with the best of them. And again, hired 97, and he's been here a little bit shorter time. We had kind of a rebid and a movement of people, and we went to a new staffing model, and so we got lucky to have Jason come out here to Herriman. So he's also a great fit. Love having him here. Great driver. Chad Johnson is not able to be here with us tonight. Again, he's one of our senior paramedics. He's actually helps manage and run our quality assurance program. So, which is they review all our reports from all of our paramedics, go through, make sure that we're dotting our I's, crossing our T's, and that they're picking out anything that may not be correct or abnormal, or they're looking for trends, anything like that. But they're making sure the stuff that's coming through is top notch. So he's not able to be with us tonight, but we do have paramedic Heather Best, which she's been here on a few other occasions. If you guys remember, she was given the life-saving award just a few weeks ago. So we're trying to keep her here in Herriman. She's hopefully at least assigned to the South Battalion, but we're trying to keep her mitts on her because we like having her around. She's awesome again at her job. It's great having her here. Again, 2007, and then she works here as often as we can get her here. Then, last but not least, and probably the most important spot in my opinion, is the firefighter. That's where I came from. So firefighter Chris Scott. Again, he's been on the job for several years. He's been in Herriman now for just about 2 years, so it's great having Chris out here. Again, motivated. He's fun to have in the station, does a great job while he's here at work, and we're proud to have him out there. And like I mentioned, these are all people that, if I have a problem, they're people I'd love to have show up at my house. So something that sets Station 123 apart from some of our other stations too is some of the special assignments or the things that they're trained to do. So we went through the iterations of how we're going to handle the water rescue piece and recovery when that situation calls for. And currently our best mode of operations is our surface water rescue and recovery program. We worked on the dive stuff. We're still looking at options and ideas. The dive thing is extremely challenging to maintain and make sure we're doing it correctly and not exposing our personnel to undue risk. So right now we're rolling with the surface water recovery where they're trained, they have the equipment there, and they may not be able to go under the water, but they can do just as an effective job doing it safely on a boat. And where it doesn't matter who's in that station, we can get them plugged in there. With the dive thing, it's a little more specific, vacations, and it's challenging to keep that going, but we're looking at different ways that we can handle that in a different way. Then recently, with the addition of all the trails, which are awesome out here, we're working with Herriman PD to establish a mountain/search and rescue program to make sure if any of our residents get hurt up there on the hillside, we're there quick. And so PD is doing an awesome job on there. We're jumping in there, we're helping them out wherever we can. And again, our goal is to make sure that service is to those people as quickly as possible, whether resident or guest. We don't want them waiting on anyone. So we're going to be there. We've already actually implemented one of these just before the snow came, and we've learned lessons, and we're doing some other stuff as well. So, and then for the winter months, especially with Black Ridge, we train all these guys up in ice rescue. So pretty extensive course. They go out there, they spend a lot of time in a classroom, and then they actually go out there and do physical drills and exercises, make sure they're prepared for that situation and that incident if those were to come up. South Jordan does similar training for their crews because they have the lake out at daybreak. It's awesome having these guys right here, right down the street from the reservoir. And even with the gates closed, even the day we're out there training, there's kids walking around the pond, and those gates don't stop a whole lot of people. So we want to make sure we're ready to respond in case anyone happens to have that emergency out there. So these guys do a great job. Like I said, I'm proud to have them in this battalion and proud to have them in Herriman. So great example of things going right out here. A couple of things I just want to highlight. One other thing two things I feel are pretty important. Recently, I know it was passed on to Brett now, but UFA was given the GFOA Distinguished Budget Presentation Award for their 18-19 budget. As many of you know, that was one of our biggest improvements over the last 2 years is the way we budget our documentation, ensuring that we're holding ourselves to the highest standard as possible. So our finance division's amazing. We've got some really good and talented people in there. They hold us accountable on our end. And it's pretty amazing to go from where we were to this. So that's quite the accomplishment, especially for them. Then one other thing that's just began yesterday, as a matter of fact, is we have selected a consulting company and an engineer firm to start looking at our stations that were deemed at risk for earthquakes. So I don't know if there's a news story on a couple channels just last week where they highlight some of our stations. One of them being here in Herriman, Station 103. A little bit of concern with that station with the age of the building, the construction. It was older. A lot of our older stations just didn't meet the standards that we have today. And so 103 is in our top 5 stations to be redone and rebuilt and put to that standard. And so I know we mentioned this in our last quarterly report. There's still ongoing discussions on the proper location. Some of that also has to do with the impending Olympia Hills discussion and what's going to be best as far as locating that station. As Councilman Smith mentioned, we definitely want to highlight our higher call volume areas with heat maps and call data, because like I said, we want to make sure that station's put in the right place, because once it's there, it's probably not going anywhere. So we want to make sure that we put a lot of thought into this one, but for the time being, 103 has definitely been pretty much slated for replacement, even with the seismic evaluation that station we know needs to be replaced. So that's going to be something that's coming up, especially once we kind of pinpoint and identify where that location is. And so we'll be working on that over the next few months and hopefully have plans moving forward in the next year or so. Kind of another update, Station 112 and Mill Creek up in Olympus Cove. We just redid some new plans. It's more of a modern looking fire station that kind of fits the profile of the community, fits in well. Not too big, not too small, just right for the crew and the job they're doing up there. And I imagine we'll see a very similar fit here in Herriman. So I think the station's going to be very, very respective and fit in well with this community. And so those are some things that we're doing a little bit differently that I think are definitely taking us in the right direction. So that's all I have for this part. You'll be hearing me again later on about fireworks, which is pretty exciting. So you guys have any questions?
You may have just answered my question. We're in a dynamically growing area. You mentioned with some unique elements in our community. What are your biggest concerns?
You know, that's hard. And Herriman's unique. We do have, I've spent a lot of time, and I say a lot of time, a lot of my shifts I spend driving the foothills, getting, number one, familiar with the area, but number two, assessing kind of those hazards and what we're dealing with up there. And we still have, we have homes right up against those foothills. I mean, that is their backyard. Luckily this year, we're kind of in good shape right now. In Utah's at 190% or so their typical water load. And with a lot of our long-term and short-term fire forecasting, they're actually predicting at least a normal season around this area, which is actually relatively slow, depending on what we all consider normal. But it's shown that we're going to probably ride out the moisture well into July, August. But that being said, we always want to be prepared. Camp Williams, again, is still a threat, even though they've made a lot of mitigation and taken a lot of efforts up there. There's still concerns with what happens over there, as well as lightning and just what we saw last fall, kids playing with fireworks. Things can happen out here, even though we feel like we're safe. These restrictions are a little too tight. That's a perfect example of why we have them. And so my concerns still really lay in those foothills. I want to make sure we're focusing a lot of attention and effort into those foothills. That's where the fire's going to be most challenging to maintain and stop. And then actually my second concern is those just random open pockets of fields and grass and sagebrush that are in between our little communities and subdivisions out there. Those pose a significant risk, even though we don't think they do. And we've these, some of the restrictions we've put in place might be little, apparently they might appear over the top. There's a reason. I mean, if we get a fire in one of those little drainages in between houses, it's extremely difficult to get in there. And so our station crews are very familiar with that. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty impressed with how quickly, not only can they get there, but get to the fire itself, even when it's not accessible by a main road. Our prevention guys are on top of it with urban interface planning restrictions, and they have guidelines for those homes going in. So that's my biggest concern, I think, is just making sure we stay on top of that. So I don't know if that answers your question there.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
You bet. We're also wrapping up CWPP. I know that came up a while ago. I've been working with staff here, and we've got most of it done. We're having some challenges with the document itself being user-friendly, but that probably will be wrapped up, I'm hoping, going into June, July. Just a couple more finishing touches on that, and we'll present that to you guys as well so you can see where that product is and some of the plans we're looking at. So,
Back to your comments just on the firm that's been selected to do some station evaluation, mentioning that obviously one of ours is on kind of the top of the list there as far as replacement. Can you just give us a sense of what the, at least the anticipated or desired timeline is for that report, and then really replacement construction, and again, how UFA plans to pay for or facilitate that?
So we're working on that right now. They just began this study, so it's KPFF Consulting Engineer, so I have that. I'm not exactly sure on the delivery of a report. I know they want it soon. And recently, the reason why recently too, with our board, they looked at, we've met with Zion Financial Corporation, Zion Bank, and talked about some of our bonding options. And I believe, and I don't know all the details yet, I can get those for you to address that further, but they're gonna be looking at some bonding to at least cover those initial 5 stations so we can get those going. The chief has put those on really a high priority as far as making sure that the funding is in place. So on this, because I think they're looking at about a year or so to make sure all that stuff is done as far as the funding and the bonds and the voting, and make sure we have all that in place. He wants those to be arriving, or the be eligible to spend those funds by the time the reports are done and we have plans to move forward. So from what I understand, and I'll get more information to you, I can get you some specifics, is they've been talking about that for about the last 4 to 6 months. And so we're probably about 6 months into the process. And so I would like to think, and I'm thinking we're probably looking at a January timeframe when we'll have plans probably drafted or being drafted, and hopefully looking at station construction. And the hard thing too is we still got to pin down that location. I'm hoping we're moving forward by the beginning of next fiscal year or so. So that gives us just a little over a year probably. So 18 months from the start of the process where it got serious until actual, hopefully, breaking ground. So, but I'll see if I can get some more specifics.
Thank you.
I know there's a lot of discussions been going on about that, so.
Okay.
Well, we appreciate all the effort from all of our firefighters and all of our fantastic part of our community, and we're really grateful for it. So thank you for that report. We appreciate it.
Awesome, yeah, thank you.
All right, we will now move on to the other side of our public safety, which is our Herriman Police Department quarterly report and Victim Advocate Survey or Services Review. Chief Carr.
Council, Mayor, thank you for having me tonight. We'll give you, I think what you'll see is we've changed the quarter review, and I think you're going to enjoy it quite a bit. We have a side bet going, Chief Pilgrim and I, and so there's no pressure, but we'll look for a blind vote after who did. No pressure, right? All right. Start off with staffing and cases. We're 6 months at the end of this quarter. 1 is HPD. We have 35 officers in Herriman City. We're fully staffed, no allocations that are open and no turnover. So we're looking very good in that regard. And again, that's not common. We're recognizing from other startup agencies to have no turnover. So I think we're doing it right. Calls for service received. You'll see through your months how many calls we've received for service. We totaled out 4,067 calls for service in quarter 1. Calls for service means a call comes in and a police officer goes there. Now we're going to define that a little bit more in depth here in just a second, but we've had an officer respond or somebody call on a telephone to have some interaction with somebody. Right now we're looking at a yearly projection of about 16,000. And just to give you an idea, we have 16 patrol officers out there. They're going to handle about 1,000 calls each, okay? Police cases worked in 2019, quarter 1. You'll see down here that we have 306 in January, 267 in February, and 313 in March. What does that mean for a total of 886? That means that somebody had to do some work on that after our call for service came in. And typically that's Detective Sergeant Brent Adamson. He has to dig through each one of those calls and see what's going on, where it needs to go, and what kind of follow-up it might need. We're projecting about 3,500 of those calls this year. And of the 5 detectives we have, they should each touch about 709 cases. Oh, no, you're fine. Trending by year. We've only been here for 6 months, so our trend scale looks a little screwy, but bear with us. You'll see that we've had a
Missing a
dip.
bunch of data.
Yeah, we're going to fill that in, I promise you. I've even extended the years to do that. You can see that in our winter months, just like the fire department, we have a decrease in calls. But some of what impacts this is the days in the month, right? If we only have 28 days in February, we're not going to have as high a caseload. So we expect to see this come up like we have in past years through the summer months. Persons crimes. So when we look at our persons crimes wheel here, I've added for you what that kind of means as far as harassment and sex offenses, trespassing, and so on. Family offenses, 92, which typically family offenses are all things domestic related and like a domestic violence type of call would fit in there. Harassment, sex offenses, we have 25 of those. That does seem to be on track from what we experienced with the previous police department, Unified Police Department, so that seems to be trending right. And robbery, we did have one robbery. It was down at the Maverick, and it was a real-life robbery with a gun. So we had one of those in that quarter. You'll see as we go down further, we had assaults. That's your typical somebody got punched, disorderly conduct, and drug offenses. We're going to talk a little bit more about drug offenses as we continue tonight because we have the world-famous Marcus Beckstead here. Any questions on that before we move on to the heat map? These are trending just about where we think they should be. So we're not seeing anything that is abnormal for us here. All right, heat maps. There you go. We're seeing over on 118, as far as the violent crimes that we just talked about, or persons crimes. We're seeing some heat there around the apartment complexes. And as we move south through the city, you'll see we're not red, which is good. We're orange. There might be, with City Hall, sometimes that will light up, and the reason that is because we do reports here where we can't establish an exact address. We use this one as our home address. So you might see some stats come out of that area. But any questions on that map?
No questions.
On the ones that are coming down in the south part of the city, is that generally related to construction, since there's a lot of construction down there?
No, this is persons crime. So these are going to be your domestic violence, your assaults, those things that are perpetrated against another person, your robberies and that kind of stuff will happen. And that's what you're seeing on this map. So down in that further south area, that's down in the Autumn Crest development there that we're starting to see some issues, to be quite honest with you, and around City Hall here. Good. Okay, property crimes. This too is trending where we think it should be for quarter 1. Now in quarter 2, we'll probably see fraud make a jump, and that's because of the IRS misfilings, right? We have people coming in that are going to defraud the IRS. So we probably will see a significant increase in that next quarter, but for this quarter, we're seeing kind of everything right about where it should be. Vehicles, as you can see from the definitions on the side, the vehicle is a stolen vehicle. All things burglary, whether it's a house, business, or cars, will fit in that burglary piece that you see over there. All right, heat map. Kind of where we think it's supposed to be, right, for property crimes. Those are where your burglaries are happening and your thefts and retail thefts, those kind of things. We're going to see some of that retail theft happening over on the 134 corridor where we have the businesses, obviously. Any questions on that one? All right, moving on to traffic, everybody's favorite. Our DUIs, we had 15 DUIs. That's about double of what we had last year. Actually, a little bit more than double.
Last year over the entire year, or last year?
In this quarter, sorry. In quarter 1 of last year, we're seeing that's probably about double. And I have those statistics, obviously, from my previous employment here during this quarter. Our crashes are up a little bit, but we think that's probably because we had a hard winter. And so, a lot of snow on the road, more snow days, more crashes.
Question on the DUIs then.
Yeah.
You're saying that they're about, a little bit over double last year.
Right.
What do you attribute that to? Would it be enforcement would be the main reason?
Yeah, and I'm not going to say that we did, there just weren't enough people here under Unified Police Department. So now we have the staffing to do it, and we actually have an incredible relationship with the Highway Safety Council, who gives us funding to go out and do DUIs.
DUIs,
Yeah.
excellent.
Are we, in your opinion, is the new alcohol blood content level having an effect on this, or is it tend to be people who are well over the limit?
The ones I know about, the ones that I've been that I've heard in the back room while the DUI processing is going on. They're well over. However, I'd probably point to Cody on that to see. I don't know if we pulled specific stats on that. But
Okay, so this is mostly, okay.
I don't think that we're going to see a lot in that .05 to .08. But we may.
I
we
know
may
that
see
the
some.
legislature is looking at possibly doing some changes to that law again.
Right.
And so I just wanted to know if our city really had an effect one way or another with that, and it looks like.
We're definitely getting them off the streets, and you're going to see in this next map where we go to the heat map, there might be a few outside of the city of Herriman, and the reason that is when we operate under the Highway Safety Council, we put out to our partner cities, if you have a DUI, we'll come process it, because we're on a state grant, it's state money, and we feel like that's a good partnership piece. We bring them back here and process them, of course, in Herriman, but we'll wander into South Jordan and Riverton if they need help and take a DUI.
Sorry, I'm going to scroll a little bit because you opened it up to questions.
I did.
I know you and I have talked about this quite a bit, Chief, but for those who haven't seen, to pick up on the staffing element, we have nearly double the number of officers, so double the ability to take care of some of these things. When an officer responds to, say, a DUI, how long does it take them to take care of that to where they're able to go respond to something again?
The DUIs are a little bit longer process, and there's several components to that. We have when we first pull them over, we do a field sobriety test. That takes more time than just, say, a regular traffic stop. But then we have the impound of the car, which is usually done by an assisting officer. So when we start talking about man hours, it starts to add up quite dramatically, right? If we take that person into custody because we have a reasonable suspicion that they've committed that crime, we then bring them back to the station. If we have to write a warrant, which most of the time we do to gather blood or breath, it's just adding hours onto it. The warrants are usually pretty quick to get, but it's just that processing time. Then we typically have to take a bathroom break, and they're off to jail. And again, that's down in South Salt Lake. So your time on the road, you're probably looking at 4 man-hours per DUI. Is that about right? Maybe. If it involves an accident, that changes things entirely, and it's a whole lot more manpower. So you're talking an accident in manpower, probably 6 to 8 hours. If it's an injury and we're landing helicopters, then you're bringing the fire department, and you start racking up some man-hours.
Thank you. I think it's important to kind of point that out because it might, just looking at the numbers, it might seem like, oh my gosh, we have all this stuff is increasing, but not really. We just have the ability to take care of it.
We have the ability to address it now, right? We have more people on the street.
Prior to this, if something, I mean, really our staffing, we had 1 or maybe 2 people per shift. And so if something like this was reported and there was something more serious, of a more serious nature, that gets the attention first, and this maybe doesn't get picked up on. And now we have overlapping 4 to 8.
Can you just real quick, to expound on that, number of citations that we had looks like 767.
Right.
Roughly the same time last year, how many were we looking at?
About 46.
So we went from 46 citations to 767 citations because we now have the manpower to be able to do that. Now, if I understand correctly, that is not us going out and just citing for the sake of citing. It's all complaint-based, correct?
Right, it's complaint-based, and we do strategic law enforcement, speed enforcement rather, when we have a complaint. And you know that we have the complaint process online. Our residents can go there for those listening or watching. You can go onto the website and you can make a complaint. That is a direct workflow for the officer in his car. So when those officers come to work, they have that direct workflow. They know who they need to go contact, who they need to talk to, and say, what are the issues? Do you want a speed trailer? Would you like a laser gun to run to make sure what you're seeing really is speeding? And they work through that process. We think that this really, the biggest contributing factor is exactly what Councilman Henderson said, which is our guys aren't racing from call to call anymore. We literally were going from one end of the city to the other with no time to really look for that proactive piece, to take the drunk drivers off the street, to ticket the person that's driving reckless. We didn't have that ability. And it's to say nothing about the officers that worked here, because they were all very top quality, high caliber folks.
Many of which are still here.
There weren't enough of them, right? So we've been able to, about this time when I left last year, I think we were at 19 in the precinct, and we're at 35. So that should speak volumes of what we're able to do. I also think that through proper...
with no tax increase for the residents.
Yeah, there's no tax
increase in cost.
That's for the same amount of money, the same amount of money that we collect each year, and that will increase as our city grows too. But I also think it has to do with command in the city. Your command staff is in the city. Your supervisors are in the city. Your detective and detective sergeant are in your city. So those cases are being worked here. Those man hours are being worked here. Those miles in your trucks are being worked here. And those trucks you own now. All of the equipment I wear, they drive, it's yours. It's the residents of Herriman City that now possess that. So very, very good. But to answer your question, it's all very strategic based. We don't go out and, like I've said before, I don't hide behind the Welcome to Herriman sign and shoot cars with a laser. This is all complaint based, right? We're
And
not looking
there have
to-
been, I know I've had a couple of people come to me and say that they were surprised that they were the ones that made the complaint and also the ones that got the ticket.
Yep, and that happens on occasion, and they'll bring that to our attention, and I'll say, well, just so you know, we're here taking care of the problem that you
Thank you
reported.
for the call.
Yeah, please drive the speed limit and wear your safety belt. So what you're seeing here, I think, is just that really good piece of law enforcement that's happening in your city right now. And I might add that we're not going to Copperton and up in the foothills and those kind of things. We're in the city of Herriman proper.
And on these citations, we don't necessarily really financially benefit it. The vast majority of the funds that come from these citations go to the state, not to the city, correct?
That's correct. I think it's 15 or 20% actually make their way into the city. We, and Brett, if you'd like to expound on that, you may, but you don't make any money on them. We're not out there
It
trying to make
costs
money and
us
pay for a police department.
exponentially more to issue citations than we would ever receive in any kind of
Yeah, and
fine.
we take those state grants, we go out and we conduct enforcement. We don't make any money on that. We're not in the business of trying to make money to run a police department on tickets. That's not at all what's happening.
The notion that they're out there writing tickets because it benefits
As
the
a
city
revenue
financially.
generator.
Absolutely the opposite.
Yeah, we go out and write tickets when
Yeah.
people violate the law, and we have time to do that now. So for those watching and listening, don't violate the law.
Those sitting in the audience that might be younger drivers.
Yep, younger drivers especially. And we try to be very fair about it. So, any more questions about the traffic piece? All right, let's talk. We did not populate this with traffic citations because it would have been really messy. But all the other things traffic are on here. You will notice again down in Rosecrest intersection what you see there. So,
When was the new lighting installed there? I know it was
I
roughly
think
during that
it
time.
was mid-August maybe of last year. Do you remember you're talking about the pre-lighting for
Yeah.
the light's going to turn red right
Was
to
it August?
transit lighting.
Was that when it was
I
put
think
in?
it was in the summertime. Mid-August, roughly. Do you remember? Yeah.
So this includes having that new lighting in that intersection, okay?
Yep, and I think we're just going to struggle with that intersection. Okay. And to compound things just a little bit, our RSL Stadium out there that is a huge success and a big draw, we have to unload traffic from every one of those events every time we have them, and we're unloading them onto Mountain View Corridor. So I think it'll be helpful as we get that road cut through to 134 through Autumn Crest. Any questions on what we're seeing here? You'll see some dots down in Riverton. That I'm assuming, and over in South Jordan, is we jumped over there on a DUI when we're on the state grant.
I know that we previously have had a lot of problems, and basically our most dangerous intersection has been the one right on 134th and 56th. It seems to be that that's come down a little bit. Does that seem to be the case? Or?
Yeah, we've been out doing two other types of enforcement other than speeding, and it's red light and pedestrian. And so if you see people crossing the road, you better give way and yield because it might be the police out doing an operation, and you'll likely get a ticket if you don't yield to them. So we think that might have something to do it. Typically on the 134 and 56, what we're seeing is red light violators that create accidents, right? It is a lower speed intersection, so we're not seeing a ton of injuries related to that. However, over on Rosecrest, when we have an accident over there, whether it has injuries or not, it usually has a ton of damage and it's a lot of cleanup. So back to Councilman Henderson's point earlier, when we have an accident, you're taking a lot of police officers off the street, man-hour, and firefighters. If we roll engines out on that, there is a whole lot of money and time spent on that. So just to understand that more clearly. Any questions on what we're seeing here? It kind of is trending the same. You're right, Mayor, we have seen that 134 calm down. And that's good. We were watching 12600 east of Mountain View Corridor because we were having some stack ups there that were concerning to us. That seems to have gone down just a little bit. I don't know real reason why. So, Any questions on that? All right, moving on from traffic. Event spotlight. We'll go through several spotlights in the agency. This event spotlight is for the Youth Academy, because what else, right? What an amazing opportunity that we were given to spend the time with the youth of our city. And I would be remiss not to tell you that every city department was really involved, but the HPD, the CAC, which is the Citizens Action Committee, you'll see those guys out doing things there, volunteers that want to come in and help the police. Communications and government affairs, events, public works, operations, facilities, administration, everybody helped with this. And as you know, not one department can make something this big happen. And we're going to get to see a video in just a minute how great it was. But not only did we have departments help us, we had partners come forward. And not only partners in our city, but partners that are in West Bountiful that wanted to see this happen. Performance Ford came through for us and did some fantastic things with shirts, because we wanted our Academy youth to be wearing a shirt that identified them as Academy youth. Providence Hall Charter School helped us quite a bit. And for you, those of you that made it to the graduation, we had Big Buddha there and Robert Kirby, who told some very fascinating stories that we won't go into repeat. Something about a cat and a car. So let's talk about the participation. Sherry and Councilman Orrin enjoyed that quite a bit. So 34 youth were enrolled and 33 graduated. One of them was game for a few and just really wasn't fitting what they thought it would be. So that's a great, over 8 weeks, a great graduation rate. Interest was exceptionally high, and as you know, we unfortunately had to turn folks away. We right now, because of our officers, I told them there's not enough money to do another one. We can't do 2 a year. They've gone out and they're trying to get donations to run another one. So we think that our SRO unit will run it all summer. The difference is going to be it's going to be a camp. So we'll have those kids with us for several hours during the day, and we'll be able to be a little bit more involved with them and hands-on, that kind of stuff. So we expect that one will go really well. It'll have a zero cost. It will be all donated from the community and those that wish to sponsor that. So again, to go through the 8-week court, we had dispatch tour. You're going to see this on the video. School resource officers came in, forensics, detectives, victim advocates. If I might, when we do the camp, this next class we give, where they're going to get in depth on forensics and be doing fingerprints and processing crime scenes. And we're going to it's going to be a great time. They were able to go to the firearms range, experience the Vertra, the jail tour, canine. We did a police scenarios, which was amazing to watch them work through the police scenarios. And you'll get to see some of that in the video as well. And then, of course, our graduation ceremony. To remind you, this is all about the youth continuity program that I believe in. And that's taking our youth both through their schooling, but also not just through schooling, to bring them into our system and help them if they're looking for a job. We're going to walk them through Youth Academy, up through Cubs and cadets, and through the police academy, and hopefully to be a police officer in our own city. That's kind of what we're doing. And just to be involved with them and let them know that we're here for them. So, video, do I click it one more time, sir? This is dispatch that you're seeing? This is the Vertra system. This is our SWAT partner, South Jordan. Our vest, we wear over our whole t-shirt. So on this, it's got 2 big straps. would be Jose. There you go. All right. Any questions about the Youth Academy? Great experience for the kids. Great experience for us. Probably a better experience for us, to be honest with you. We want to do it again and again and again. So, we'd also like to do every quarter a case highlight. This case highlight was on the double stabbing that was just north of City Hall here. It happened on February 26th at about 2:50 p.m. We responded to the report of a double stabbing, and we had 2 occupants in the residence. It was a domestic situation that resulted in both of them being stabbed. I'm not going to go into the specifics because it isn't court adjudicated yet, but we'll give you this overview. And there's a reason that when we get to the second page, you're going to see the reason that I find this case so fascinating. The wounds were critical, and we responded. We contained the incident with UFA. They came and provided life-saving efforts. We had multiple ambulances there. We secured the crime scene. We had to land 2 medical helicopters. At the same time, we're trying to contain the scene. We investigated the incident forensically and documented the scene. As you'll recall, this is the same night that we had the movie night, remember that. And our folks stayed there until, I think it was about 11 o'clock near midnight that we cleared. And on top of all of this, we responded to area hospitals because we had 2 victims or suspects. We couldn't quite decipher what was happening early on. And we provided advocacy, which we'll hear about here in a minute as well. We managed media requests and released information, and this was an extended investigative process that took several days. Now, that being said, for those of you that remember our previous conversation about UPD and having folks in the precinct, we had 5 officers and 1 sergeant that responded. We had 4 detectives on scene, 2 detectives at hospitals, 1 forensic investigator, 1 victim advocate, and 4 command staff managing this. Continue to adequately manage all other calls that originated in our city.
That's my point with my comments earlier, is we have an event like this, and we still have staff that can take care of the rest of the city, whereas before, something like this would happen, and if something happens at the other end of town, we're waiting half hour, 45 minutes for somebody else to come out.
Right. And I was just very proud to see that not only did we handle it competently, as I knew we would, we had enough resources to handle everything else in the city at the same time.
Awesome.
0 issues. So please feel confident that your police department is capable and competent, and we're out there, and we're not missing things, right? So that's the message I wanted to send with you, and that's why I find this case. When we responded to a double stabbing, to see the chaos with the neighborhood and everything that was going on, landing 2 helicopters and investigating that, it's pretty good. I'm very, very proud of my guys. Couldn't have done better. So, moving on to the featured unit, this will be an opportunity for you to meet a division commander. In this case, it'll be Detective Sergeant Brent Adamson. He's going to come up and give you a rundown on the victim advocacy program that we have. Typically, it would be a division commander, but he's acting division commander for this week. And I'll turn the time over to him and Stacy, right? And you'll hear a little bit about our victim advocacy program. This is an amazing program, and it's grant funded.
Hello, Mayor, Council, thanks for having me. Obviously, for those that don't know, I am Brent Adamson. I'm the sergeant over the investigations unit. Brian apparently took vacation, so I got nominated to come and speak to you about the victim advocate position. Stacy, come on up, Stacy, come on. Stacy is our volunteer victim advocate, and you probably met Christy Morgan before. Christy Morgan is our part-time victim advocate, so we have 2. And like the chief said, that it's a position that's funded through a federal grant that's administered through the state to pay for Christy's part of it. The basic mission of the victim advocate is just, as the title says, to help the victim advocate. There's many different things that you can see in the slide there, but really what we use the victim advocates for is to work hand in hand with the victim of a crime, whether it's a domestic violence assault victim, a sex assault victim, child abuse. Those are the primary cases that they get involved in, but they help us with any case where we have a victim that might need some assistance from the victim advocate. That assistance, there's various different things that they do. They have funding to help with emergency housing. If we needed to put, say, a domestic violence victim in a hotel for a few nights while they work through the court process and those issues until they can find a safe place to go. So we have different avenues for them to do, but they also help with understanding the legal process. And a lot of times we as the police or the detectives may overlook really getting into what's going to happen. Now, you've been involved in a crime, you're the victim of a crime, the perpetrator's been arrested, or maybe they've fled, and this is the process moving forward. This is what's going to happen in the court proceedings, and the victim advocate is in constant communication with that person and walks them through that process. Let them know what's going to happen at court, be here in the city court to sit down with them and comfort them as they're waiting for their turn to go through their court process or whatever the case may be. This particular case is kind of an example of one of the things that the victim advocates become involved in. I worked with Christy on this case, but to make a long story short, really what happened here is there was a failure in the process behind the scenes. This particular incident, a male and female couple get into a domestic dispute. As you can see, the male ends up initially going in for medical treatment, comes back, there's an additional violation, a criminal violation, where the individual gets arrested. And for those that aren't familiar with the process of a protective order, there's really kind of three different ways that a protective order comes into place. One, you go to the court, you fill out an application, you obtain a protective order, and that protective order is served on the respondent, and they're given whatever the parameters are. You can't come to this house, you can't call this person, you can't do X, Y, and Z. Or you're arrested, booked into jail, and part of the release from jail is that you get a jail release agreement, and you have to sign that and agree to follow whatever the parameters are. You can't go back to the house, you can't have contact with the victim, you can't do these things. Or in this particular case, the judge orders it in a court hearing. You're in court, the suspect's in court, and the judge says, you cannot do this. These are the rules that you have to follow. That occurred, but the paperwork didn't make it onto the system, so the police didn't have the ability to see that the judge had ordered that, and so there was a real problem there. And Christy and I worked together to jump through the hoops, find the right court, find the right person in the court, and figure out why that connection hadn't been made. And we got that document on the system, made sure that the victim knew it was there, that it was in place, and that the police would be able to act if, in fact, the person violated the protective order. So she spent a lot of time wading through that, working with the victim to figure out why that had not occurred and where the breakdown was, and got it fixed for us. So before we get into the stats, I'll talk a little bit more about we've had a couple of cases that have directly come through the victim advocate. The victim advocate's office is set apart from the police department. If you go downstairs and kind of see the layout of where our office is, Christie's in a separate part, and part of that is we don't want the victim to have to come into the police station to traumatize them. We want them to be able to come into the building and directly make contact with the victim advocate and skip the police. And that's occurred at least twice that I know of, specifically where the victim has come in, never contacted the police, had no contact with us, and directly reported that they were the victim of a domestic violence crime to the victim advocate, who then worked with them and helped coach them along and make them feel comfortable in coming to the police and filing a report, because oftentimes they don't want the police involved. They are afraid that that's going to make the situation worse. So we do have direct reporting that's gone through the victim advocate and come to us, and then we've become involved, or an officer will come to her office and meet with the victim and the victim advocate and work through that. As far as stats, you can kind of read through those and see how the breakdown. This is the number of victims that were served, and gives you kind of a race, gender, and age breakdown of the individuals that Christy and Stacy have interacted with. As far as some of the different types of services that they've provided, you can see the different criminal violations that they've had. So by far and away, the domestic violence takes the majority of their time, and that's to be expected. That's generally what they're purposes and what they're doing, but they have touched other cases, including assaults, child abuse, pornography cases, robbery. There's various different things in there. And we can even use them as well as our chaplains if we have, say, a death notification in the city where we feel like we need somebody to come with us, and we'll take the victim advocate with us to the scene to maybe contact a family member and make that notification if we feel it's appropriate. As far as total services provided, you'll see the number 500 there, just below the 144 victims. That number is basically reflecting how many different types of services. Did we provide them housing? Did we provide them support at a court hearing? Whatever those different services, all those different services that Christy and Stacy have available to them to help, whether it's counseling or any number of different things. But she totaled up a total of 500 different things that we offered to citizens or residents during that first quarter. Any questions about the Victim Advocate Program?
Good job.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you
very much.
And if I could, for anybody in the audience, anybody listening at home or watching at home, if you are the victim of domestic violence, if you feel like you want to hurt yourself, please, if you don't feel comfortable calling the police, come in and see Christy. Contact Christy. We have her information that's available. And if it comes to us that way, that is absolutely fine. And we will provide whatever service to whatever extent we have to do that they're safe. So this is the featured members section, and I would be remiss not to have Marcus Beckstead, if you would stand up and come join me.
I don't see him in the crowd tonight.
It's undercover tonight. Marcus is just an amazing, he's an amazing person, amazing individual, but he's even a more amazing officer. He is part of the investigations division, and you all know Marcus from events, right? He is at all of them, showing his smiling face. He's in our community-oriented policing unit that's in the investigations division. And what he does is, again, he's one of the events officers. He works with Wendy's staff very closely to make sure that the events are safe for everybody and that we all can enjoy our time there. But more importantly, he's a community officer. And so he's out shaking hands and talking to people, taking care of those neighborhood problems that can be sticky, that sometimes aren't necessarily police problems, but need some intervention, and we're here to help. What we don't ever do is tell people, sorry, there's nothing we can do for you. There's always something we can do. There's always a direction we can send somebody. And Marcus excels at that, at being able to send people in the right direction. Part of the unit that he's in is also the directed enforcement unit, which he probably likes the most, and that's as a narcotics detective and handling major and special investigations. So if we have something that's unique and large and kind of bizarre, he specializes in it. And that's what you saw Sergeant Adamson up here. He works for Sergeant Adamson. Sergeant Adamson will assign him those types of cases. Now, the cool part to Marcus, he's part of EFAST.
Those are the big boys.
The bad boys, right? The task force. And we get to talk about that a little bit. Here are his quarter 1 2019 stats. And these are fugitives in our city, not somewhere else, folks, right here. 10 arrests in Herriman City, 1 arrest in Salt Lake City that was a Herriman fugitive that he tracked down there. So 11 arrests, accused of 18 crimes. They were both female and male, and they ranged from 19 to 60 years old. The shocking part is these arrestees are accused of rape of a child, aggravated assault, strangulation, very up close and violent crime, retaliation against a victim, very concerning, aggravated sex abuse of a child, felony possession of a firearm, felony distribution of controlled substance, and sodomy of a child. They're no longer in our city. They're in jail, headed to prison. This guy right here. All right, 3 search warrants. He did 3 search warrants in homes. 1 vehicle tracking warrant. One of the residents was closed by the Salt Lake County Health Department for meth contamination. He also works with evictions from apartments. If we're going back to the same apartment, we have domestic violence there. He knows all the apartment managers. It's his job to go know them, and they're gone. So another thing he specializes in. He's got several cases currently under investigation, and you'll hear about them or see about them. One of them we ended up doing a SWAT hit on over in the Copper Creek area. I'm sure you all saw it on Facebook and as it traveled around the internet. That house is now, that's the house that was shut down by County Health Department. All right, 20 narcotics cases investigated by Marcus. He seized 21 ounces of marijuana seeds for cultivation, LSD, 38 grams of meth, marijuana, methamphetamine, heroin, paraphernalia, several large hunting knives, and the most concerning thing of all, 5 firearms taken out of our community so they can't be used to commit crimes. Marcus. I love this picture of Marcus. I chose it personally. That's how he interacts with folks. You can see that this is over at that stabbing. This guy knows people and how to interact with them. I'm proud of this guy. All right.
Wait, I have to say something about Marcus, about Officer Beckstead. I was scrolling through my packet, and the picture of you with your smiling face was on my screen, and some of my kids were right behind me, and I said, yep, he's definitely one of my favorite officers. And my daughter says, how can he have such a great smile on his face and be a cop? And when I read all these things, the people that you interact with, but you always have a great smile on your face. I so appreciate that you are truly interact with people. So what a great attribute that is for you. Thank you.
And that attribute is not lost when he just comes to work in the morning. He comes in the door, everybody knows Marcus is here because everybody's laughing and having a good time because he goes through and says hi to everybody. Make sure, do you need anything? Can I do anything for you? He cares about everybody.
None of us really believe that, Chief.
What's that?
None of us really believe that. No, I'm just kidding. We all know.
Yeah, I wanted to back up to this one picture that I so like of Marcus. This is my walking tall picture where he's walking away and all the other officers are like, wow, he is so awesome and cool.
And including you. You're like shaking your head
Yeah.
there, Chief.
We're going to embarrass, what's that?
You're like shaking your head like, how did this guy do
Yeah,
this?
I'm looking the other way
He
because,
sent me to go get some food or something.
but all of these pictures just encompass our friend Marcus. And with that, I would like to give you the I Am Aligned token for you. And for those that don't know, that are watching from home and listening, this means that I support the residents. My goals are aligned with city goals. I work with your team, and I find ways to help you. And I don't think that anything much more could encapsulate what this man is. So thank you, Marcus. And we'll continue this with quarter reviews to come where you'll get to meet eventually all of your officers here in your police department. All right, Police Week is next week. It's May 12th through the 18th, all week long. And if I might, I see that my friend Tammy Moody showed up, and she is helping us greatly with this. Also, we have kind of an ad hoc group, the Herriman Police Wives, that have come together, and they're going to start to help us do some of this. So do you want to join me here, or you want me to just run through it real quick? I think I'll remember. Just help me out if I forget anything. We're going to do a Fallen Officers Memorial Ribbons, and it's going to surround City Hall. 130 officers, 151 officers, including our K-9 officers, will be memorialized with blue ribbons that the police wives are going to put together. Should start over at 134, go up the road around City Hall and on Main Street. So it'll be very, very touching. We're going to have an HPD motor display inside City Hall. We're going to pull one of the new motors inside City Hall so that people can see it throughout the day, throughout the week. And we'll have an appreciation board, actually several appreciation boards, right? Inside Hungry Herriman on Monday, we'll be out there with them. People that come down to eat, we'll have a truck out there that the kids can play in and turn the lights on and off. And I'm sure Jose will be out there goofing around, right, with it as well. So if you've missed Jose's action, come see it then. Wednesday is a Fallen Officers Flag Ceremony at 9 a.m. and Lieutenant Stromberg and his honor guard will be conducting that service. So there you go, folks. I feel like we have done an amazing job. This will be at the end of this month. June 1st will be my 1-year mark that I will have been here. We'll be closer to 9 months as a police department. And I feel like we really strive to give you a 10 on the police department, but I think this one went to 11. Thanks.
I agree. Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Yeah.
Chief.
Any comments by the
Yes, any
council?
questions? I'm sorry.
Just thank you.
Thanks.
It's fantastic.
We've said it before, we'll say it again. We appreciate what you and all of our officers do for our city, and
Thank you.
we love that we are finally able to see the results and show our residents what we knew was going to happen, which was they were going to get better policing services and a better protected city.
And our
it's-
outreach is full steam ahead.
You guys are
So,
fantastic. Thank you
more
very
great
much.
things to come, I promise. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will move on to the public hearing portion of our meetings as I see some of our youth take off. Please don't feel that you have to stay if it's time for you guys to head out. You're welcome to stay as long as you'd like, and we'd like to have you here, but don't feel like you're going to offend us by leaving. Item 9.1, public hearing on a proposal to vacate a portion of the right-of-way on Main Street located at or near 4900 West, 126 South. Blake.
So I think there's an exhibit for this item. And while it comes up, this is a piece of property that was already voted on to be surplused. You can see it's just located on the west side of Mountain View Corridor, north side of Herriman Boulevard. And this is a remnant piece of property that we have determined will no longer be needed for any roadway widening in the future. And so this is obviously a public hearing to vacate this piece of property and turn it into usable property next to it.
All right, this is a public hearing. So at this point, we will invite members of the audience to come and speak to this item. If you do, the same rules will apply as the public comment section earlier. There will be a 2-minute time limit. We will ask you to state your name as well. But if you would like to speak to this item at this point, please come to the podium at this time. Okay, seeing none, I will accept a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
That motion has passed, and that public hearing is closed. All right, we will have a public hearing relating to the proposed stormwater utility fee. This is something that was continued from our April 10th meeting. This is a new fee that will be assessed to our community if passed by this council, but it will affect all entities, not just taxpayers. So other entities like the city itself, churches, schools, anyone that has property that deals with that affects our stormwater plan would be assessed this fee. So if you would like to speak to that at this time, please. Do you have any comment?
I did want to have one.
Sorry, thank you, Blake.
No, you're good. So I have not received any comments on this, but I would like to point out that if someone can't make it, since we've been leaving this open, I'd welcome them to send their comments, if they're watching Facebook later on, to Herriman or engineering@herriman.org, and then we can pass those on to the council if there's any comments regarding this.
Blake, if you wouldn't mind, for those that might not be aware of what's going on, give us just a brief summary of why we're considering this.
Sure. So yes, we were audited by the state stormwater regulation group, and we had a number of violations due to inspections and just housekeeping items, mainly with our construction that's going on. As you know, Herriman's growing fast, and there's a lot of work to do with the construction oversight in regard to stormwater quality and quantity control. And so this, we engaged a firm to come in and analyze our issues that we had and give us some ideas on how to go about solving them. And we put together a committee, a stormwater committee, reached out to the public, had a handful of people on that committee. We met several times, determined that the path forward would be to implement a stormwater utility fee and assess that across to all the entities in the city, include residents, businesses, churches, even the city will pay it. And that was determined the most fair way to accomplish the funding needed to run the stormwater program that the state would require so that we could be in compliance with them. Is there
And there would be substantial penalties if we did not comply, to the tune of roughly we could be in uncompliance for about a day and a half before it would cost us more than just running the program,
Yes.
correct?
That is true. So you would have to pay the fines and then still get into compliance. So the option that looks about the only option is to get into compliance and keep doing it. And many other cities across the state, almost every other city in the Salt Lake Valley has implemented a fee at this point.
And what would this fee be for the average single detached home?
So for the average residents, it would be single-family home will be $7 per month is what's been proposed, and obviously the council can elect to adopt what that is, or more or less.
I'll just add, it's not something that we want to do. It's not something that, of our own volition, we said, hey, this needs to be done. It's basically top-down from the state. They're mandating it across the board. It's an unfunded mandate. That
That's
they came down and said every municipality has to have this stormwater plan and pay for it. So we're doing what we have to do.
Sure, and in addition to that, though, it is a benefit for the city. I mean, when the storms come and there's nowhere for the water to go, because instead of open fields, there's asphalt and concrete, we have to have a good process so that your houses don't flood, so everybody's basement isn't full of water. So it's definitely mandated, but in addition to that, it's the only responsible way to handle wastewater also.
As a new entity, obviously, we've done a good job in planning and putting in the infrastructure to handle that. The problem really has been identified as a program to manage that and how to fund the management of that moving forward. Is that adequate?
Yeah. And one thing I did want to point out is there are a lot of areas in the city that are still developing and growing. There's no storm drain in those areas, but those areas still use the roadways and the businesses and the network to get throughout the city. So that was analyzed in the report, was there is a certain buy-in, and that's the $7 per month is what it is to pay to operate this program for all the roads throughout the whole city. It's not just specific to areas, it's citywide.
Citywide. Great. Thank you, Blake.
All right, well, with that, I will go ahead and open up the public hearing portion of this meeting, which has been continued from our April 10th, 2019 meeting. And as you come up, please ensure to state your name.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. My name is Kyle Walton. For the past few months, I've had the honor of being on the committee that participated in this study. And I'm a professional planner. And during my profession, I found that any kind of new policy that we need to come up with to justify this new policy changes, the new policy that we're coming up with needs to be justified by the existing code or master plans or the current policy of the city. As I participate in the development of this new fee study, I've been going through the city's master plans and the policies that we have. And I found that there's two particular policies that we have in play right now that support this new fee. And I want to call attention to those. One of them is the funding policies of the infrastructure improvements that are found in the 2012 Stormwater Master Plan. And it also is consistent with the action item number A15 of the 2025 General Plan, which calls for the preparation and utilization of action plans and capital facility plans. With these substantiations that you can use, you can be able to therefore explain to the public. As a planner, I've needed to do that. We've always needed to make improvements to our codes and such. And the question always is, why? And the why is we need to be consistent with federal standards. And compliance now can be justified by, we've already made decisions in the past, and these decisions are now all existing code or policy in the city. And so therefore we can move forward with additional standards or codes or master plans that would address issues that we may have in our city right now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, we appreciate that comment.
Very good comment.
And thank you for your help on the committee.
Absolutely.
All right, seeing no further public hearing at this time, I will accept a motion to either continue or to close.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing. I believe that.
You want to leave it open, Blake?
Oh, you want to leave it open? Okay. I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, we have a message with that date. That continuation, do we need a date, a time specific? No, okay, so just continue. So we have a motion and a second. Clint?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes, that motion passes. That will be continued to a future meeting. So there will be another opportunity if there are any members of our public that have not had an opportunity to speak to it, please either send that to engineering herriman.org, or please reach out to us or come to a future meeting where this will be on the agenda. Our next item for public hearing is public hearing discussion of an ordinance amending and restating the water fee and rate structure. Justin Edwards, our Public Works Director. Who stole it?
The cop.
Oh.
Unfortunately, I don't have as cool topics to talk about as these gentlemen, but let's face it, you really can't do your job without me.
That's right.
And you guys would be thirsty. So again, this is a public hearing for the water rate analysis for culinary and secondary water.
He wouldn't even give you the real one.
Let's start off now.
Man, sabotaged already.
I know. It's all right. So we'll talk about a few points about the purpose of the study. So the last study that we did was in 2014. Since then, we have been generating enough revenue to sustain the water fund. A lot of that is due to the growth that we've been seeing. So obviously, Alan and I and others monitor that every year to make sure we have the funds to cover our expenses, and we've been doing that. And we're covering our funds now, but one thing is also good is also to bring back and update some of the plans we have. Capital project expenses, reimbursement agreements, as you see there. We also need to look to make sure we're covering our debt service obligations. Update forecasting revenues, operational expenses, and so forth. So a couple of the other things we looked at since the last rate study, we looked at adding some categories that we've noticed, and we'll go into a little more detail there. Equalization on some base fees, we'll go into a little more detail as well. And then also we just want to maintain that we are encouraging the use of secondary water. We're expanding our secondary irrigation system, and it's very important to the sustainability of the water for the city. So the analysis showed that the system itself is very well managed on the operational side and finances. We try and do repair and replacement as needed, and we try and pay for our capital projects as well through our rates. The water rates will increase each year, so we're looking at a kind of a phased plan. We'll go into a little more detail there as well to try and match some of our capital projects, O&M costs, inflations obviously, and like I said before, meet our bond rating agency obligations. Some of those obligations you can see there, we need to have a 1.25 minimum debt service coverage ratio, and then also a minimum of 275 days of cash on hand, and so you'll see some more detail as well. So this talks about our cash. As you can see there, we have a healthy cash balance now, but as we move into the future, even with some of these increases, we have a lot of capital projects, a lot of repair and replacement projects that we'll be dipping into, which will make that cash on hand come down. As you can see, we still stay above our minimum requirement, and then obviously within a few more years, we'll come back and readdress the rate to make sure we're staying online. This just goes through some of our bonds that we have. We have outstanding bonds. This shows our debt service. 2003 is about ready to be paid off. I think it's a 20-year note. And so in 2023, you'll see that one fall off, which is nice. And then this just kind of shows our bond obligations through the analysis period. This talks about our coverage ratios. You can see the dotted lines at the bottom show those minimum targets. The red line is just basically our enterprise fund cash on hand. The gray line includes our impact fees. You can see we have healthy impact fees because we have a lot of growth right now. As you can see, those will dip off as we continue to pay for capital projects as well into the future. So kind of into what the residents want to see is what's this going to do to me? Well, as you can see, we have the average monthly bill for the consumer will increase by approximately $1.10 per month. And they'll see that adjustment in the 2019-20 budget. There's going to be a slight reduction in the secondary base fee but there's a modest increase of about 2% to the usage fee that those users will see. That will bring the overall average usage fee down about $1 per month for those secondary users. What we're seeing is we're seeing more people connect to our secondary system. It's overall decreasing our costs in our secondary system because it's running very efficiently. And then those those people with secondary access will pay a base fee of $9.28, and then on their culinary side, it's $18.50. The people that have culinary only, their base rate is $27.83. One of the things we wanted to do on this analysis, previously, the base fee for secondary was $2 higher, which made the monthly fee $2 higher if you have access to secondary. Looking at that over the last several years, we've come to think, well, they have access to water in general, so we'll bring those base fees together and make them common. So culinary and secondary base fees are now equal. This just goes to show some of the usage and annual costs that you can see. As you can see at the top, these are the proposed rates. We have on the culinary only, we're seeing, and so those are actual usages over a year, average uses for homes, residential homes. As you can look at that, the usage for culinary only is about 169,000 gallons a year. Those with access to secondary, but they're not using it, is 163,000. So you can see we have some tiered rates in there that increase the higher water usage goes. So we're seeing some conservation there just compared to some culinary only rates. And then if you are connected to secondary, you can see people are thinking in their mind the secondary is cheaper, so they're automatically using more. So we can just be happy that we have meters because I'm not sure what that would be if we didn't have meters. So you can see on average, a secondary user is using substantially more water, even though we are metering it and charging based on usage, which inclined makes you would think a secondary user would have a lower annual cost for water, but you can see it's actually higher on average.
But their grass is green.
Their grass is green. This just kind of shows on a graph kind of the different users. So those with access to secondary or with access to secondary but choose not to use it, you can see their average monthly bill is the red line on top. If they have access to secondary and choose to use it, the green line is there. This is their average monthly bill if they're using 41,000 gallons on average. And then the green line, or sorry, the blue line are those that don't have access to secondary, and it's culinary only. So you can see there is a huge benefit to being able to use secondary water if they have access to it and choose to use it. This just shows, over the next 4 years, we're proposing a 2% increase every year, and this just kind of shows how those rates will increase over the years. The orange line is a culinary only. Gray is if they have access to secondary and choose to use it, and the yellow is if they have access to secondary and are using the secondary water. So you can see how those rates will increase over the next 4 years. Just want to touch base on our commercial water rates. These aren't changing much as far as just the general use of them. We have a flat rate for usage on commercial because generally they can't control how much water they use. They can't necessarily conserve, they need to run their business, right? And so for that, we have a flat rate. They do have a tiered structure on the base rate based on the meter size. So if they have a bigger, larger meter, they can use more water, therefore their base rate's higher. But the flat rate of usage is equal. So they'll generally see just a flat 2% increase of their bill over the year. The one thing, like I said, we're adding some of these tiers. We're adding some rate structures. This is one of them. In the past, or currently, our commercial and non-residential meters for landscaping has followed that same flat rate. We're seeing we want to promote conservation, so we want to have a tiered structure for those commercial or non-residential landscape meters. So we're making separate tiers and rate structures for those, and those will be implemented. They'll generally follow the usage of a secondary rate tier because they're used for landscaping, but obviously the dollar rate per tier will be up a little bit higher than secondary because it's culinary water. But we're hoping that this will help promote some conservation for water for outdoor usage. So in conclusion here, it is currently proposed that we'll bring these back in a future meeting. More than likely, the first meeting of June is what we're thinking. I'd like to hold the public hearing open until that meeting, if that's okay with you, to make sure we, get all the public comment that we can. We'll bring that back for approval and hope that this will be implemented July 1 to follow the budget year. So what that means is if it's implemented July 1, the increase, the residents won't see that increase until their bill in August for July usage, if that makes sense. And so, obviously we want to make sure that we're maintaining our revenues to meet cost inflation and capital needs. But this seems to be a modest increase, 2% over the next few years. I think we'll be able to meet our obligations.
Okay. All right, any questions for Justin? Okay.
Thanks, Justin.
With that, we'll go ahead and open up our public hearing at this time. Once again, same rules will apply. If you have a comment, please come to the podium and state your name. Seeing none, I will accept a motion to close the public hearing.
A motion to continue the public hearing.
That too.
A second?
Motion is second. Sherry?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
I vote yes, the motion passes. All right, moving on to the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
Second.
Motion is second. Jared?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
I vote yes, that motion passes. Item 11.1, discussion and consideration of a resolution to approve the tentative fiscal year 2019 to 2020 Herriman City budget and the amended fiscal year 2018 to 2019 Herriman City budget, and request to schedule a public hearing on May 22nd, 2019 for the formal adoption on June 12th, 2019. Alan Ray, our Finance Director.
Okay, we presented a budget to the City Council on April 10th. We are asking tonight that that budget be approved, which means that that's when it's published to the public. We would have scheduled the public hearing in our next meeting on May 22nd. And then on June 8th, we would propose that we have the final adoption, which will accomplish us getting this done before the June 20th statutory deadline. So with that, I just want to say that the council is still able to change the budget in any way up until it's adopted June 8th. So any changes that you desire or that comes from the public hearing next meeting, those can be changed anytime up to the adoption. The approval tonight says that you're okay with making it public, allowing the public to have comment on it, and we will make it public tomorrow morning if you approve it.
That was my question. Tomorrow morning, and will you direct the public exactly where they can find this tomorrow morning?
Yep.
I believe our communications team will be all over that.
Perfect.
Typically, we put it on the website, they post it on Facebook. All of our media is used to get it out there.
It's a nice big document. It's 294
Yeah, it's nice and big.
pages.
Here's the packet, if anybody's interested in.
But we didn't read it because we didn't want to be as long as the cops.
Touche. All right, if there's not any questions from the council, I'll accept a motion.
Just a comment before we go into the motion. My opinion, this is probably the single biggest responsibility given to us as elected officials, is to have stewardship over your money and to see that it's properly spent, properly allocated, that we're following all of the proper accounting rules in doing so, that we're looking out for the needs of our community, and that we are transparent in doing so, because as I just mentioned, this is your money, not our money. And I, for one, believe that this council as a whole, but I will tell you, I personally, take this responsibility very seriously. There's not a lot of public here tonight. We hope that they will come out now that this document is going to be published, that they will make comment on it. Now that it is published tomorrow, that you will take time to review it, because the work that our staff, our finance director, our communications team, that everybody does on this document. Again, Councilman Henderson just kind of showed it to you if you were to print it out, what that looks like. Over 270 pages. And it is put in a manner that we want the public to understand it. It's not just pages with a bunch of numbers on it, where you just really have no desire to dig into it and to understand it. This document is put out in a manner in which we want you to engage in it. We want you to read it, and it's very easy to read and very easy to understand. And that's really been a goal. We've continued to see the evolution of this document over the last many years, actually, and it gets better and better and better every year. And once we get this document out to the public, we think, man, how can we improve it? And it isn't but the very next day after the formal budget is adopted that all of these individuals who'd worked so hard on it immediately start talking about ways that they think that they can improve it for the next year. This is a year-long process to obviously manage the budget, forecast for the following years, and to, again, find better ways to explain and help educate our residents on the budget process. We spend a lot of time in here talking about a lot of different issues, and we have public hearings sometimes that are very lengthy over issues that may seem very mundane to some. Again, not trying to offend anybody, but we had some very lengthy hearings on chickens and the rights to have chickens on property, and that's the process, and that's what we do in our community. And sadly enough, when it comes to several million dollars of your money, we get very little input on that. Now, we can take that one of two ways. One, that we are doing a good job in being stewards over your money, and your the lack of comment is that we're doing a good job. Or two, that isn't something that's important to you, but we want it to be important to you. That's why there's so much effort that goes into the document that goes out there. And again, this is staff that puts out a phenomenal document. So that's a really long-winded way to say, once this document is available, please take the time to pull it up, to review it, to engage in it. Bring us your questions. We want to spend your money the way that you want it spent within the parameters that we have to spend it. It's your money, and it's the single most, I think, that the single biggest responsibility we have as elected officials. And if we can get your engagement in that, then we can all be happy with the end product.
I agree. And I just wanted to reiterate some of the things that's been discussed in the work meetings, since maybe some people don't look at those as much. But last meeting and this meeting, once again, we had examples from different departments taking a look at how they're spending money and how they could do it differently to save money. So it's not just about, you'll notice in this budget that we're bringing in more money, but we're not just keeping pace with what we're spending. We're spending, the gap between what we bring in and what we spend gets a little wider, which is always where we want to go. And part of that is directly attributed to good departments saying, hey, instead of $3 million for that water, how about if we look at it in a different way and we only spend a little over $1 million, so we save the city a couple $1 million. Or today we talked about some trails, 4.25 miles of trails, and only 0.75 of those are city funded. So really taking a look at different areas that we can start shrinking, spending more wiser. We don't spend it just because we have it, but are we spending it wisely, and is there better ways to use it? So kudos to everybody who looks at all of those things, because all those are comprised in this budget, I believe.
Ditto. You guys hear me talk about this all the time, but I'm just going to hold up. I insist that they give me a paper copy because I like to make notes in the margins and highlight things. And just in the first few pages of this year's budget, it's different than last year's because we make improvements every single year. Our staff does such a great job putting it in context, right? So people might open this document and go, I thought this was supposed to be numbers. And for the first, gosh, I don't know how many pages, 20, 30 pages is explaining what the budget is, what the process is, the factors that surround the budget. Councilman Smith and I and Michael were at a conference this last week and spoke with a representative, a council member from a much larger city that has a much larger budget. And the comment was made that they spend $21 million on trying to help the homeless, et cetera, and made a comment that everybody else has, all the other cities have to help out with this issue and others, et cetera. And we spoke to him afterwards, and I pointed out that I asked him flat out, what should we do? What are you saying? What does that mean? And everyone needs to help out. Well, you need to put money aside from your budget every year to help with this. And I said, let me put this in context for you. We're running an entire city, 50,000 people, compared to this city of roughly 200,000 or so, on $15 million. You put $21 million of your budget towards this one thing. We're making everything happen, for that, 15 to 19 million that we really use every year. So kudos, not just in putting this document together, but in making decisions for all, as I constantly put it, having all the right people in the right places and working together. Our departments cross over all the time. How many times did we hear at that conference? People refer to the kingdom building within a city. Each department fights against each other for their share of the budget, et cetera. That doesn't happen here. Every one of our discussions is how can we help each other and get the things done that are best for the city. So every time we talk about this, just hats off to everyone and the phenomenal job they do in putting together the budget. The document's fantastic, but really running our city the way that we do. I mean, if you look at the level of service that we have, that we provide to residents for what we bring in and how we bring it in, amazing. That doesn't mean there's not room for improvement, and that's what I love about this process. Every year it does get better. We're always striving for it. So anyone that has questions or is curious, please take a look at it. It is so much more readable than others. We all serve on boards of other entities. We're representing the city. Those entities have bigger budgets than our entire city does, and we're handed, 2 or 3 sheets of paper. Here's the budget for, $50 million organization. And we ask questions, they can't answer the questions. Where does this money go? I don't know, we'll have to look at it. If I have any of those questions, I can find it right here.
Yep.
So thank you all very much.
Was that a motion?
Two, you just make me keep thinking, and I want to keep bragging about the job our city does. Alan, could you just briefly talk about the bond rating that we just received? Because this goes to exactly what we're talking about, and that's fiscal responsibility.
Over the last 3 months, we have been being reviewed by Standard & Poor's for our credit rating and our credit rating for our debt, which, the better our credit rating, the better interest rates we get and the more interest we have in buying our bonds. But our sales and franchise tax bonds were just upgraded from a AA- to a AA+. Our water bonds are already a AA+, so for all of our bonds of the city now are a AA+.
Thank you.
Pretty much
That's about the best you can
we
do.
can get, yeah.
It's the best you can do. And part of the budget process, obviously, is being fiscally responsible, setting some money aside for those unforeseen things. And basically the state limits how much we can put in fund balance.
In our
correct, Alan?
general fund, we can't have more than 25% of our budgeted revenue in fund balance. We try to be as close to that as we can. We were at 24.8% last year. So we are holding the maximum that we can for a rainy day.
So that goes to tell you the great people we have in place that really help make this job that we're asked to do and allocating that money very, very easy, and it's much appreciated. So if everyone's ready, I will go ahead and make a motion.
Yep.
Motion to approve resolution number R20-2019, approving the tentative fiscal year 2019-2020 Herriman City budget and the amended fiscal year 2018-29 Herriman City budget.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Sherry?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
I vote yes, that motion passes. All right, we'll move on to 11.2, discussion and consideration of an ordinance regulating, preventing, and banning the discharge of fireworks within certain areas of the city. Chief Pilgrim.
I don't know who has a better end of this deal, me getting to present twice or you getting to hear from me twice. It's awesome. I'll try to keep this.
We'll reserve decision till
I
later.
said I'll try to keep this brief. Okay, so again, kind of sometimes not a popular decision, but it's one that we need to make just to make sure we can assure for the safety of our residents, as well as the people who have to work these nights and keeping this so under control, and those who don't have a choice in the matter, right, when something bad happens. As we saw in September, we had a pretty catastrophic fire just on the fringe of Herriman. Lost 2 homes and damaged several properties, as well as threatened the lives of hundreds of people, as well as the first responders who had to go take care of a fire that was caused by fireworks unlawfully discharged in a banned area outside of the parameters. So, again, this isn't a decision we take lightly. I spend a lot of time personally myself driving these areas to make sure what we're doing is still commensurate with the needs of the city and the safety of the residents. And we didn't make, what I'm looking at for this summer, we didn't make any changes to the restrictions that we already have in place. I feel they're pretty adequate, especially with just the continual growth that we're seeing on the southeast edge of the city, just along Mountain View Corridor, Juniper Crest, off the side, Autumn Crest or RSL. There's a lot of stuff going on there, and I feel like these are they're good, they're accurate. Having worked out here for the last few years on every 4th of July, definitely have seen a decrease in our number of fires that we're responding to on those nights. And so I strongly feel that this is still a good restriction. I feel like, even though some people may not totally understand or agree with why we're doing this stuff, I do feel it is in the best interest of the residents to continue doing what we're doing. And I just wanted to present this to you for your comments or feedback, concerns, anything that you may have for us that we may want to look at. So yeah, that's kind of what we have.
Sorry, Chief, I just wanted you, if you could, and maybe you don't know yet, will you reiterate the dates? Because in addition to this, there's only certain dates that you're allowed to light off fireworks.
I don't have that with me. I believe it was the 2 days before. I gotta look and double check.
Okay.
I think it was 2 days before and only
I think they changed
day
it
after, right?
Changed it.
It's
1 and 1.
I think it's 2 days before the day of and 1 day after.
That's what I'm thinking too. It's 2 days before and 1 day after, and then the day of. So
maybe when we post this, we can clarify that and post it
we'll make sure
with
that's
it.
out there. Yeah, I
That'd
have
be
another
good.
printout. I didn't bring it up
Awesome.
here, but I have that. So
Because some people get a little confused about that, I think.
But this restriction is enforceable year-round, so even if, even on those days or not on those days like we had last September, you will be held to these standards when we are looking at any, tickets or anything that might be issued
Sure.
due to the use of fireworks.
sure. And we always try to educate. We prefer education over that, but there are times where that is an absolutely inappropriate action to be taken. And if you notice too, it does say open flames within the 200 feet of those undeveloped property. So it does restrict the use of open fire in general. So a lot of this too is based off of not only us, but the state of Utah, Fire Marshal's office, and the state forester, who also has very similar, if not even more stringent recommendations, especially on open land.
So Riley, just to clarify, there's no changes on this map from last year,
No changes,
correct?
no.
And I guess the only question I have as we move forward is I do know that, some of these identified areas that are interior, we are starting to have some infill development
Yes.
in those. So I think that, again, as we get that infill development, we continue to evaluate if those are still necessary. Because again, people obviously want to be able to have the right, and we have lots of areas where you can in the city, and we don't want those that are in a developed area to feel like they don't have the same rights as somebody else in a proper area. But again, I know that we need to monitor that because we have a lot of continued development going on in the city.
And I fully agree with that. And one thing I take a lot of pay close attention to is when I drive those developing areas, how far that growth is going. Last year I had a few areas where I put them kind of on my radar as if we keep getting developed in here, we're actually gonna be able to reduce some of those restrictions. I think once we get through this season and we see kind of the construction progress through the fall, we'll be able to come back next year with actually some reductions in some of these areas.
The infill.
Yeah,
Excellent.
so.
You kind of answered my question earlier, but I'm going to ask it again here first. So my friends in Copper Creek that might fast forward through all of that to this part. Every year I get several emails from the Copper Creek area, you know, the area on the map I'm looking
Yep.
at, that they're really frustrated that they can't set them off down there. You said earlier one of your main concerns was kind of these open pockets between homes because it's difficult to get your apparatus there and take care of those situations when they come. I'm assuming that that's the basis for restricting that area.
Correct, and I've looked at that area specifically each year, and I'm trying to come up with the most. So the challenges you have with some of those areas too is where there's not straight roads. It's really hard to identify 200 feet, and what I've come up against there too is one is the accessing, like I shared earlier. If we do get a fire in Copper Creek or any similar drainages or little draws like that, it's extremely difficult to get equipment and people back there to extinguish those fires, which leads to an increased threat to the homes in the surrounding area. And number two, just driving through those areas, I really tried to find the best way. And there's some I kind of presented last year where we might be able to make some reductions street by street, but it's the analogy of like splitting hairs. Like we might be able to reduce it on this street, but not the neighbor across the street or the next road over. Makes their job hard as PD, makes our job hard. And when it comes to enforcement, it's sometimes confusing to the neighbors. What I want to spend a lot of time on this next year is really looking at those areas closely and see if there's something we can do. But I think part of the challenge is just finding a clean line. And then,
Which is what the state has required us to do
Yeah,
now in terms of
extremely difficult.
you have to use clearly identifiable geographical, I can't remember their exact
Yeah.
terminology. And the other thing is that in order to, since we have it on a map, we have that historical significance that has existed for a long time. Once we remove it, you basically can't, it's very difficult to get it back. So I think we need to be very, very strategic as we look at those. Give as much leeway to our residents as we feel safe doing, but I think we need to be very strategic and methodical as we do that.
and I feel your frustrations. I have talked to a few homeowners and residents in that area.
No,
and-
it's not my frustration.
Well, what I mean is the broad frustration.
We just ban it completely.
Yeah.
Which I've kind of explained to them, but I call it out just because I've had several conversations there and I've tried to explain, no, we go through a very methodical process, and that's one of the issues, but it's one of the issues we have in a lot of areas of the city. Looking at this map, there's a lot of these interior areas that are, quote, developed, but our terrain gives us lots of opportunity for these awesome trails and things, but those awesome trails create a fire hazard that winds through these neighborhoods that makes it impossible to have
Exactly
a clean.
it. And I've talked with Brett about this. I've gone through some of these neighborhoods and I just scratched my head. I'm like, man, I really wish we could find a way to change this line here, but it just becomes extremely challenging. So we do take that into consideration. I've spent a lot of time both looking in those areas on foot, driving by. I've gone over maps. I've looked at, like Councilmember Smith said, past fire history, and it's maybe over an abundance of caution, but I also feel like it has worked. It has made a difference, and so hopefully they kind of understand that. My concern too is that people who choose to abide by this and who appreciate these sometimes are the ones who pay the price when something bad happens, and that's what we're trying to avoid. So it's not always popular, but we feel like in the interest of public safety, this is definitely a good move and a smart idea.
We appreciate everybody's efforts in evaluating this every year.
For sure.
If we're good, I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2019-09, regulating, preventing, and banning the discharge of fireworks within certain areas of the city.
Second?
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Jared?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
And I will vote yes, that motion passes.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Chief. All right, that brings us to the end of our agenda. For future meetings, on May 16th is our next Planning Commission meeting at 7 p.m. Our next City Council meeting is on the 22nd of May. Our work meeting will start at 5 p.m. and our regular general meeting will start at 7 p.m. Please be aware that on the 11th, we do have Pedalpalooza, which will be at Butterfield Park at 9 a.m. On the 13th, we do have our community fishing class at the Cove at 6 p.m. May 13th through the 17th will be our Law Enforcement Appreciation Week. And then May 15th, we will have our Fallen Officers Flag Ceremony at City Hall at 9 a.m. So we'd encourage our residents to attend those events. With that, I will accept a motion to adjourn our city council meeting.
Oh, wait, one more thing. If any of you are interested in serving on the Herriman City Youth Council, we are accepting applications online right now, so please apply and participate in that. Sorry.
And what's the minimum requirements to engage in that, Sherry, do you remember?
Oh, yeah. Ninth,
Just a ninth grader?
yeah, like 14.
And a
Yeah.
resident of the city.
Yeah, they need to be a resident. It's usually 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders.
Excellent.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I will motion to adjourn our city council meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you. To our new planning commission members that stuck around.
When are the applications due?